Hello everybody. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to our today's lunch talk. It's entitled Starting Up the Circular Economy. My name is Gerd Scholl. I'm a facilitator and consultant in the area of sustainable business. And I was already facilitating a talk yesterday where we discussed the innovations from within the P0 world. Today we will have a look at innovation happening outside P0. And we will ask ourselves what needs to be done to further accelerate innovation for circularity. I'm very happy that my three guests here bring exciting ideas, examples for closing material loops, for zero waste management. And first of all, I would like to welcome Jacqueline Vega. He is Technical Director, R&D, Packaging and Sustainability with Procter & Gamble, and he's also initiator and today the representative of Holy Grail 2.0. I also would like to welcome Hannes Füting. He's Chief Marketing Officer with the Hamburg and Berlin-based startup Super 7 with its brand Repack. What Repack is about, he will tell us in a minute. And last but not least, Christian Knobloch. Thank you so much for being here, because originally we planned with your colleague Vivian Loftin, and due to a sudden and unexpected family issue, she couldn't make it. Very happy that you are here. He's also co-founder of the startup Decider, which is based in Freiburg, so not that far away from Munich. So before, or during our planning of this session, we agreed that the three of them will briefly give a pitch on what sort of innovation they offer. And first of all, I would like to invite Jan to give us a brief overview of Holy Grail 2.0. Jan, the floor is yours.
Good. So thank you very much for the introduction. I classically start with trying to explain a 5-pillar model, where it's important if we're talking about recyclability and reusability. You can see here basically the 5 pillars. So the first pillar is all about designing the packages so they either are recyclable or reusable. Then there needs to be kind of access to collection. Consumers need to act and put it in the right bins. And then obviously there needs to be a sorting job to be done, right? And basically Holy Grail is all about focusing there on the consumers and also on the sorting bins, because these are the two big bottlenecks to make circular economy work at scale. So if I quickly have a look into the goals of P&G, again, all the packages to be recyclable or reusable. No packages will go into the ocean, advancement or recycling solutions, and then also a very important one is to reduce the use of virgin petroleum-based plastics by 50%. Right? So how are we going to bring this one to life? Again, a couple of examples. Design for recyclability. You see there two articles: pouch made out of more materials, and a full-body shrink sleeve bottle, 100% PCR, and then with a shrink sleeve that the consumer should remove. Right? So this is an example of design for recyclability, and we are highly dependent there on Recyclance to give us guidelines for all over Europe. Another one is then more on the reuse. So this is the responsible beauty refill pouches. So it's a system where consumers have to put the refill pouch into a beautiful aluminum bottle and reusing that aluminum bottle as well. Then, as mentioned, Holy Grail is trying to solve the two big bottlenecks. It's consumer participation and sorting. And then obviously, a very important one is also that to load our packages with a lot of PCR. What you see here is, again, most of these bottles do contain 100% PCR already. And then the last one there, the flexible, is one we announced last week. It's the addition of 50% PCR also in film packaging. So let me talk quickly about Holy Grail. It's a cross-value chain collaboration. We currently have 172 members. You can all see them over here. And important to mention, it's cross-value. So there are resin producers, there are fiber producers, converters, universities, sheet vendors, brand owners and retailers. So in total we have now 52 brand owners and retailers, and we're now the process trying to go into the market in both Denmark, Germany and France. And as P&G we have been committing all of these brands, so more than 100 SKUs, to put the digital watermark onto the package, right? So all of these items, and most of them actually already have been launched here in Germany, all of these have been turned into intelligent packaging, which can then be read in a more efficient way in a sorted way. So that's what Holy Grail is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I have one question.
One question. I read on on the website of Holy Grail 2.0 that you run pilots. Could you just maybe briefly elaborate on that?
Correct. So this is still an R&D program. So the thing we are developing is what we call add-on modules. So add-on modules that you can easily combine with a standard near-infrared sorter. And so that work already has been completed with both Tomra and Pelank ST, so two big near-infrared machine vendors. We have been testing it then in what we call semi-industrial conditions. Mm-hmm. So there is quite a lot of video material available on our website as well. So semi-industrial conditions means that we have been mixing all of these items, and this is just P&G, but there is obviously many more brand owners that also have put materials in the mix. We're mixing it with standard curbside collected, but also municipal waste, so make it very dirty. And then, running detection, ejection, and purity trials to see if the technology works, right? So that was really phase 2. And that's now also fully completed with Tomra and Pelank. And as I was mentioning, now we are entering into the market. So we are asking all of the brand owners and the retailers, and we currently have 52, as I was mentioning. We're asking them to enhance their packaging, put it on the shelves. Consumers then hopefully will, after use, they will hopefully put it in the right bin. So we see those products back into a couple of selected sorting centers and also at recyclers. So there is a mix going on in both Germany and France, where we have 2 material recovery facilities, 1 plastic recovery facilities, and 2 recyclers, which all will receive these units. And hence we would like to learn in a real industrial environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, sorry, Hannes. Now the floor is yours. We move on to the second, or maybe the first starter, because Holy Grail 2.0 would not be actually be a startup. Hannes.
Hello.
Please.
My name is Hannes Füting, as you mentioned, and we are running a startup that is taking care about compostable packaging with a focus on food packaging, and we're plastic free. We solve 3 problems with our packaging, and that is problem number 1, CO2 emissions. We're not using fossil resources to produce our packaging, so the CO2 stays in the ground. It's going even further because our raw materials are natural materials, so they are collecting CO2 while they are growing, which is an advantage in these days. The second problem we are solving is the plastic waste. Our packaging is all home and garden compostable, so it's gone after 180 days. So wherever it ends up, there is not a problem with this packaging. And problem number 3, this is a little future problem we're going to solve, because if we close the loop and really compost our materials, we also bring the resources back and keep them in a circle, which helps us to protect our planet in general. Just to make clear what we are talking about, we are already on the market. This is some examples of brands that are packing their food with our materials. And I think it's interesting to see that it looks and feels like a conventional packaging solves the same problems, and it works now. That is something that is very important in the discussion. And the future challenge, that's what I mentioned on the first slide, is that it's very important to close the loop and build up the composting infrastructure to not burn the material and to make it really working in a circle.
One short question to you. What do you think needs to be done in order to close the cycle on that spot? What will help consumers do the right separate?
It's not a question of the consumers, it's a question of our industry, because we're at the moment not allowed to end up in the bio bin, which makes sense because when it's once the material is in contact with this waste inside there, you cannot detect it anymore. So that's not a good solution. The solution would be to put it in the yellow bin, which is the system in Germany. And then we need to have our own sorting, and then it needs to be transported to compost facilities that are taking care about it and can put it in the right amount to make it work. So that would be the big thing, changing the infrastructure of the waste management.
Okay, thank you, Hannes. Then I would like to invite Chris to pitch on Recida. Chris.
Yes, thank you everyone. So I'm Chris from Recida, and we are the international recyclability database. So we enable sustainable packaging management with a digital approach. The problem that we faced is that it's completely different how countries recycle, even within Europe. So it's very complicated for brands, packaging producers, and also retail to understand what recyclability of packaging actually means when you operate at an international scale. You have to look at technical recyclability, so as we've learned already, you need to factor in design for recycling, and then the recycling and practice is also different in the countries. You have different collection systems, sorting systems, and also different recycling methods. And we bring all of that information on country-specific regulation and infrastructure, on design guidelines and recyclability requirements into one tool, where we go from the packaging data to results. So what this allows is brands, producers, and retail to understand recyclability holistically for the entire packaging portfolio, but also understanding action for the individual packaging, even before laboratory testing and everything else begins. So it consolidates everything into one tool and allows comprehensive packaging data management to optimize for recyclability. There's basically 3 steps. So first of all, we digitize the packaging, collecting all the data, which is also a big issue because then oftentimes the data on the packaging is not even there. So we enable tools to get better data on the packaging, then feed it through our rule set concept where we model existing regulation on the packaging. So it could be a design guideline, it could be a legal requirement, and that in the end creates results, which combined with our country database allows you to understand what recyclability means in the countries. And we've seen very good use cases already. So some of our clients have already optimized their packaging according to the results, reduced materials, made it more recyclable, which is something very useful with the digital approach. So.
Thank you, Chris. That was a very precise pitch. Also, one question to you. How many clients do use your software already? You would like to share this information with us?
Yeah, I cannot give exact numbers, but the interesting thing is that as a startup, we've actually started working with some of the biggest names in the industry, which is not really a usual process, but it also goes to show that the impact of the software is really there when you have a lot of packaging in a lot of different countries, and we've seen really some tremendous support from these companies, and now it also trickles down to smaller organizations.
So, mic a bit closer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so some companies we've worked with, for example, also Kao in the cosmetics industry. For example, Schwartz Group, who's here, has been collaborating with us right from the beginning. Companies like packaging producers, Sure Flexibles. So a lot of support from many different areas in the industry.
Okay, thanks. I would like to ask the 3 of you, what do you find most interesting about the innovations of the others? Who would like to start? And I just move the presentation 1 slide forward. Okay, John.
Yeah, so let me start indeed with the last speaker on Recida. I think it's a big challenge. I think for the brand owners really to comply with all of the different guidelines that are in place. I think we once have been calculating that only in Europe there are 120 different guidelines in place, right? So it's impossible to continuously evaluating according to different guidelines. So therefore, I'm highly supportive on having a software that actually, as you can have seen, a software that you just click some buttons, and then obviously linked to my presentation, Recyclaws was already linked. But then if you want to be very specific on a country, the software then also allows you to give a very good indication whether or not that packaging is effectively being recycled in that countries, which then also could, complement claims that certain brand owners want to make, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's a very, very important one. As said, I hope actually that from my 5-pillar model that we see some more harmonizations, also in terms of the design for recyclability, because otherwise we're going to end up in 27 plus 3 different guidelines, each mm-hmm. country coming out with different guidelines. On top, maybe there will be in the future more and more retailers as well coming with their own guidelines. And for us as a global or regional brand owners, that's, not manageable anymore, yeah. Right? Even with software, but again, we're developing one product for the whole region. We cannot develop products for each single country, right? Mm-hmm. So harmonization, I think, is a big one, mm-hmm. Especially also in design for recyclability guidelines. But I think today it's a perfect tool to be used. In terms of the compostable items, again, if I'm talking about Europe, so a developed region, we are mainly in household and personal care, so not in food. Mm-hmm. So for us, we want to focus specifically on recyclability and reuse. So obviously these type of materials are less interesting to us, simply because we are not in food. Now, that being said, you mentioned it. I mean, compostables are typically not allowed in your green bins. It's exactly the same in Belgium. It's legally forbidden to put compostable packaging into the green bins. But here is definitely a big question for the consumer. How does he know that certain things should go into bin A or bin B, right? Mm-hmm. If you these days are getting magazines, sometimes they're wrapped with polyethylene film, sometimes it's with a compostable item, and consumers are just confused. Where shall I put it now, right? So if you would like to advocate for putting everything into the yellow bin, again, Holy Grail can make your package intelligent, and then it can be sorted maybe in the future directly into a stream that would be fed into an industrial composter, as an example. Right? Now again, effective composting also needs to be proven, because yes, you can have a compostable material that follows the ASTM norm, but the reality is that an industrial composter is running with a throughput in less than 2 hours. And so you need to make sure it's fully composted within 2 hours, right, mm-hmm. to make it effectively work. Right? Yeah. So those are a couple of my thoughts.
Thanks. Hannes, how do you think about what the others do, digital watermarks?
I think the most interesting thing about both of you together is that you are taking care about regulations and relating this to how the product is going to be designed, which is in our world the most important thing, because you can't put you can't put it on the consumer, or you can't put it on the sorting system. And you mentioned it right now. I mean, we are talking about Europe. There it's somehow possible to have several bins and sort and transport, but that's not where the problem with the plastic packaging appears. I mean, we are producing the stuff, but the problem happens somewhere else. And as far as you think about sorting and infrastructure, if you have a packaging that does not harm wherever it ends up regarding land or water, I think this is for the whole world a good idea to think about this idea in general. And then there is another thing that I maybe want to come back to you, because you were talking about the compostability. One difference is these packages are on the market now. They are working now. They are running on machines in numbers of 600 items a minute. You can really produce in a big scale, and I think it's totally important to think about recyclability and the possibility and what to do with the recyclates. That is very important, but there is a lot of innovation that is needed there, and that takes time. This is something that is a big thing for us, I think.
Yeah, thanks. And Chris, What's your opinion of digital watermarks? You're an expert in recycling, of course. What do you think about what the others do?
I think the Holy Grail project is really amazing, and I've actually gotten the chance already to see like a live demo of it, and it worked really quick and really well. So it's really exciting that this data is behind those watermarks, and that we can then use it to sort better. And also it's quite intriguing. I have to say I don't know that much about compostability because I'm really in this recycling area where compostability doesn't play a role, but I'm quite intrigued to learn more about it and also understand really how it actually degrades in the environment. Because if I imagine all of the packaging being thrown into the environment and then actually not having an impact on it, would be really really good, yeah. And also learning about the use cases that it can be used for, as we heard. So for example, household cosmetics, for example, or detergents might be challenging to use it, but for food, very interesting. So
Yeah, please, if you would like to respond.
Just like to give a little feedback. Thank you. That's why we are focusing on food, because there it makes the most sense. And we also have to find solutions where we use the recycled materials, and all the non-food areas are very good to use recycled materials. So that's why we are focusing on the food area. Yeah.
This talk is called Starting Up a Circular Economy. What do you think? Where do we stand? Just before our talk, there was a talk right next door at BDE stand. They also presented startups in the circular economy. And to me, it seems that there's plenty of things going on. Where do we stand? Do we need to pick up speed, or is the development pretty well working?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a lot of companies and governments have been making pledges for 2025 and 2030 and beyond. So yes, we need to speed up. I think obviously Europe is leading, but not all of the countries in Europe, right? So there's obviously a couple of countries which are leading, thinking about Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, and I think next one will be France. But you see obviously big movements. That's also, I would say, reflected in the numbers, right? So if you look to the German quota numbers, and I just had to pencil them down because I don't know them by heart, but we moved from 48% plastic packaging recycling in 2017 to 61% in 2020, right? So you see it's moving. Are we going to meet the targets by 2025? That's a big question. I think there are certain things that still needs to be changed in the future, like opening it up and accepting that also other recycling methodologies besides mechanical recycling, think about advanced recycling, chemical recycling, whatever we call it, that also should be accepted in the future as a true form of recycling, right? So yes, there are positive signs. Are we going fast enough? Probably not.
And Chris, with a specific focus on startups, what do you think? Is there enough going on, or do we lag behind? Do we need more?
Yeah, it's actually quite funny because I was just meeting some other startups around the trade show here, and what you really notice is that there aren't actually that many startups, so everybody kind of knows each other because there aren't that many others. So I think for such a big industry and also these tough targets that have to be fulfilled, there could be more going on at a faster rate. So I'm also with Jan on that one, that things could be accelerated, and maybe also that some new ideas, could just be tried out and leading to innovation, right? So as we can see, like new ideas sometimes end up being very fantastic and then have a big impact.
Yeah. And Hannes, what would help you as a startup? Beforehand, we talked about the Circular Economy Action Plan of the European Commission. Is that something or framework condition that is helpful in order to accelerate what startups do?
I think what is very helpful is that there is a lot of innovation prizes and startup prizes that is giving young companies a platform where they get a little proof of concept and where they get an audience. On the other hand, these fundings coming from the European Union regarding the Green Deal, that is something that is more or less impossible for startups to apply for, because you need a person that is taking care for these processes for 3-4 months full time to fill out everything. And that is a gap that is a real problem, because on the one hand, if you get a funding, you could really make a big step, which would help us a lot. On the other hand, it takes too much manpower, so it should be a little bit easier to just like get money to prove that you are working on something good and something is coming out.
Yeah. Okay, we're running out of time, more or less, and I have one last question for the three of you. This is a question I have to admit I'm recycling from yesterday's talk. We talked about circular economy with a more German perspective, and we created visions what the circular economy could look like. And finally, I asked the panelists, what is your one wish for a specific action that would foster your vision of circular economy? What would you respond?
If I have a wish, it would be that we take the word cycle really as a cycle, and a cycle means that if you put something in at a certain position and you go around, you really arrive at the same position. And one thing that is combined with this wish is burning materials has nothing to do with the cycle. And this is one of the biggest dreams I have, or the wish, that we clear this definition.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, actually, definitions are really the first thing. We also notice that all the time, that definitions are not clear, and also sometimes false claims are being made. But from definitions, I would also go towards standardization and harmonization, because that would really help everybody get a common understanding of things, and also helping set standards that should be high but achievable to move forward, and then making it towards real recyclability and circularity.
Okay, standards, harmonization. John,
Yep.
What is your wish?
And I think also I already mentioned harmonization in the past. So on all of my 5 pillars, I would like to see harmonization, right? Definitions, what is recyclability? How do we define recyclability? One uniform definition for all over Europe, right? That would already help a lot. Sorting instructions, exactly the same, right? I live in a small country called Belgium. I'm getting sorting instructions in Belgium for the French system, which totally doesn't make sense, right? So harmonized sorting instructions, harmonized definitions of quality of bales, harmonized definitions of quality of recyclates, right? So it's all about harmonizing as one Europe, and I think that's really missing to make the circular economy work.
Okay. I reckon there's still a lot to do in order to start up the circular economy, actually. Thank you so much for providing the insights on your specific innovations and your activities in this area. I'm looking forward to this afternoon's talk we will have at 3:30, because that will focus on the Verpackungswende. So we will discuss for a German context what the means are, what action needs to be taken in order to achieve the Verpackungswende in Germany. So I hope I see many of you again this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.